We're going to go back in studio here to our guest. So we saw what happened there in Acre, and the question is, what really can be achieved by that kind of destruction?
Well, I think we need to have a solution from the roots. We need to dig and see where does the problem exist, not just to continue looking on the surface of it. And again, I say it's apartheid. Israel keeps claiming that it is Jewish and democratic.
But you keep using that word. I'll just say about these are Israeli citizens who are taking part in it.
Unfortunately, it's not both, because in this land between the sea and the river, there are 7 million Jews and there are 7 million Palestinians. So this cannot be a Jewish country. And it's not democratic because, in a way or another, always these Palestinians are in different category of citizenship, or as residents or as subjects.
But how are they in different category in Acre then?
Well, in Acre, there is a clear discrimination.
There is?
Yes, because yes, they vote, but they cannot form a government or be part of it. They are receiving less budget. They are receiving less services.
They were now on the verge of entering a government.
Again, it took 73 years until it is under discussion.
Remember, also,
it's not guaranteed.
Those same Arab parties also themselves didn't want to be part of the government. They also boycotted the government because they didn't agree to the basic concept of the Israeli parliament as well, which you swear to when you enter into the government, of the Israel being a Jewish and democratic state, Israel being the nation state of the Jewish people.
It cannot be Jewish, it cannot be democratic now. In the current circumstances. And you cannot localize the Palestinian problem. You cannot say that the Palestinians inside Israel, they have special conditions, we deal alone with them. Then the Jerusalemite Palestinians in East Jerusalem, which are residents but not citizens, they have special conditions. We localize the problem. And then the occupied subjects in the West Bank, and then the refugees outside. It cannot be localized. The Palestinian question is one question.
What is the solution?
There are millions of Palestinians.
Solution, according to you?
I think this is not a question to be addressed to us. It's a question to be addressed to the Israeli society. In what direction do you want to go?
The Israeli society are seeing, what they're seeing is that people like you who say, when you take in all the picture, essentially the solution means that there won't be in Israel. There'll be one state with an Arab majority in it. Is that not what you're saying?
It is not necessary to be a state with Arab majority. It's state with equal rights.
When you say you can't disconnect all the different places, that means there would never be a territory where there is a Jewish majority, where there are Jewish symbols on the flag and on the anthem.
Why not to embrace the two-state solution? Why to continue the settlement, the colonization of the West Bank? Why to continue pushing? Now we have 240 settlements inside the West Bank. We have 800,000 settlers.
But you just said that it wasn't about the settlements. You said that the citizens inside Israel are part of the greater issue, and therefore, if there would be Israel as a state there, then the solution wouldn't satisfy you.
That's why I say the question needs to be answered by the Israelis. In which direction you want to go? To one state, equal rights, or to two states?
Well, let's take a look at what's going on in the West Bank. We'll get back to you in a second. This is in addition to the rocket fire from Gaza and internal violence in Israeli cities, the West Bank also becoming involved, with hundreds of Palestinians who rioted and confronted Israeli security forces in the town of Yaved near Jenin and in the area of Hebron and the city of Ariel as well. The riots were encouraged by Hamas, whose spokesperson called on West Bank Arabs to, quote, burn the ground and strike the Zionist enemy. At least 10 Palestinians were killed and 17 more wounded, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Those killed were hit by Israeli gunfire in Nablus, Jericho, and the villages of Yabed, Urif, Marda, and Iskaka. In the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah in East Jerusalem, where much of the unrest began a few weeks ago, Jews opened live fire on several Arabs during a confrontation in which they were pelted with rocks. So we'll go back to our guest, Samael Sinirawi. So we're seeing here also that the West Bank is potentially another flashpoint now that could erupt. What do you make of this uprising now that you're seeing also in the West Bank in addition? Is this something that the Fatah leadership wants?
Well, no one is controlling what's happening now. Not Hamas, not the PA leadership, not the local Arab leaders inside Israel. What's been happening here is a spontaneous mass protest by people against the conditions they are living in. The strategy that Israel adopts towards Palestinians for 73 years, and later after 67 by occupying the Palestinians inside the West Bank and Gaza Strip and East Jerusalem, it created the climate. And now we are receiving the storm. And it should be taken seriously. This is nothing that will stop in few days. It may cool down, but there will be another wave coming because the people are fed up. Palestinians are fed up to be living under discrimination, under supremacy, domination of another people. So this problem should be dealt by trying to find solution from the deep roots of the problem. And here again, it's the Israelis that need to decide. What do they prefer? Do they prefer
do Hamas need to make a decision as well, or should they just continue firing rockets and calling for Israel's destruction on right and left?
If there will be a political solution to this problem, Hamas will end. There will be no more any margin for Hamas to act.
So you're saying the Muslim Brotherhood organization of Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood, which exists also in Egypt and also in other countries around the world, with an Islamic ideology, which is incidentally not democratic. They're not calling for a democratic state with Jews and Arabs. They're calling for an Islamic state based on Sharia law. All that's going to dissipate if Israel does what basically you're requesting of it to do.
Well, let me ask a question. Who is now helping Hamas to continue to be ruling Gaza Strip? Who is the main power that prevented the Palestinian elections? Wasn't it Israel that was pushing to cancel the elections, the Palestinian elections? Was it Argaman, the head of the Shin Bet, that went twice to Abbas and insisted that this is a very dangerous step to be taken, that Hamas will gain power? And this is all not true, because Hamas would have been lost deeply in the coming elections.
We have to wrap up. We had a lot of subjects here that we covered. I will just finish and say that Abbas hasn't had elections in 15 years, and he canceled the elections. That's something that's worth noting. Yeah. But thank you very much for coming on. Sameh El-Sinirawi, interesting conversation. Thank you.